So, conclusion. I hope you agree now that the GUI for .NET is very well integrated into the 2 days ABL and the client product. It's fully compatible with the classic ABL GUI. That means if you want to start using the GUI for .NET, nobody forces you to rewrite your client or rewrite your client all at once. You have all the time which is acceptable for you. You should start with integrating the existing application into a GUI for .NET environment, so probably rewrite the main menu first. And for everything you develop a new architecture, probably following the guidelines of the OpenEdge reference architecture is at least worth considering. There are tools available to support you during the adoption, so you don't have to redevelop everything on your own. And even though if you don't have the time to start using the GUI for .NET today, you should start using the OpenEdge architecture and the object-oriented features in the language today. If you are familiar with these two already, it will be much easier start with the GUI for .NET. Additional information can be found at our booth at the Solutions Expo here on the Exchange Online. Our website has information about the WinKit and also well, the screenshots I've shown in the presentation. And certainly the GUI for .NET forum on PSDN or Progress communities is a great resource for asking questions about these things. So now we've come to the end of this short presentation, and I think it's time for questions from the audience.
This is Shelley Chase, and I'll be moderating the Q&A for this session. Mike Fechner is with us, and several questions were already submitted, so let's get started. Mike, the first question is, where can they find more information, like a step-by-step of the information you've provided?
Hi, Shelley. We do have provided a script of this presentation on our blog, and the blog is linked from our booth here in the Online Solutions Expo during Exchange Online. This does not contain a complete step-by-step instruction. It contains a little bit more information than I had time to talk about in this presentation. Certainly a resource which very often is underestimated is the Progress documentation, especially on the GUI for .NET. The Progress documentation has a lot of details and step-by-step introductions. We are a light version of our WinKit toolkit, which we will provide to interested parties on the rest. It's not yet completely ready. Well, the toolkit is, but the documentation to have people started with this without our help is still being written on. So when people are interested, well, just let us know using well, the message functionality on our booth, and we'll send it to you when it's available.
Okay, great. The next question is, if you have an MDI application and from the menu you launch a child window that has a GUI window, a classic GUI window embedded in it, can you then launch another .NET window, a .NET form with a GUI window in it, and how does that work? Yeah, you can mix and match and start and instantiate Progress windows and .NET forms in whatever combination which you need. With the embedded windows, it depends on whether you code in a way that the .NET MDI child window starts the Progress program which creates a window, or if you first start the Progress window and that creates the supporting .NET form. But in any way, you can start from progress.w file, another progress.w, and embed the resulting windows in MDI child forms, or also in separate windows, creating a mix and match of MDI, like seen in these Shuttleworth sample screens. Great. The next question has to do with the Infragistics grid. With your Infragistics grid overlaying the Progress browse, do you load all of the data to support the grid's filtering, or do you have some way to refresh the query with matching filters?
We typically do not load all the data into the Infragistics grid.
even with the .NET UI, the performance of a progress query is still the same. And if you have hundreds of thousands of records in a query result set, you simply can't load them in a sufficient time. So we use batching, and then it depends on the original application. When it has been client-server, we use the batching functionality of the providing source for client-server queries. When the application is already using a temp table or pro data set approach to read data like an ADM2 application with an SDO, we're using this for batching. What that means for the filter functionality of the Infogistics grid, for those users that never used it, the Infogistics grid has a functionality that if you have a list of customers, it could show you something like a drop-down list or a combo box on the column header of, let's say, the country table, and the user could simply select a country from that drop-down list for filtering. And what we need to do then is to provide the grid with these countries, and that's something where we actually need to add additional functionality. So if you really want to make more functionality, if you really want to bring more functionality into the grid than the Progress browser had before, this means you need to provide the actual information for this. Especially with filtering, that's an easy task which can be standardized, and our grid control that we're using for this purpose is an enhanced version of the grid control, and we do have functionality built in to make it easy to provide the list of the countries available for filtering.
Okay. What is your idea on implementing Office 2010 look and feel? Should we wait until OpenEdge updates the Infogistics controls?
That's a good question. Yesterday Surfpick 2 came out, and I would have hoped that Progress would have updated. And it's really a difficult decision because I think as long as you're still developing the application, it's much better to stay with a version of the Infogistics controls which is supported by Progress. If you would have some real high time pressure to deploy an application today, tomorrow, using Office 2010 look and feel, I probably would take that bitter pill and use a version of the Infogistics controls that you can obtain from Infogistics.
Okay, I think that's a fair answer. I just wanted to let you know that you had a vote here as a .NET mentor from one of the attendees. They said that you are highly recommended.
I appreciate that.
The last question, we have about 2 minutes left, I'm going to ask you is, from your experience, what is the most difficult thing to learn using this new GUI for .NET?
Well, that depends a bit on where the developer or the team of developers do start. The object orientation in the language is definitely something to learn, but when most of the business logic remains the existing business logic, that's something where maybe just one or two members of the team need to dive into. The basics of GUI for .NET is also something you learn fast. Also, OpenEdge Architect, once you really start using it, understand some of its principles, it's very easy. From my experience, the thing which takes the most time, and also for me, new things to learn, well, not every day, but very often, are the Infogistics controls. Even if you would use another set of .NET controls, typically the feature richness comes at the price of complexity. That means you have to learn a lot to really master them, to really use them to build the UI that you want to build, that you're, well, dreaming of. That's where I feel most Q&A after the actual consulting agreement with the customers, where we do have a lot of follow-on meetings, and yeah, definitely the Infogistics controls.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's all the time we have for questions today. I want to thank you for your hard work putting the session together and answering all of these questions. To the audience, thank you very much for attending this session, and remember to keep your head in the cloud.